It's time for Taking Care of Business on Midlands 103. With thanks to the local enterprise offices of Leash, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
Hello and good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Taking Care of Business. I'm Ronan Berry, and coming up over the next hour, Irish AgTech is going global, and Jack Pilkington of Agri Data Analytics will discuss innovation in that sector, a recent trade delegation to Brussels that he was part of, and how technology could shape the future of Irish farming. Also, growth doesn't have to mean, apologies for that. I'll also be speaking to Tony Delaney of SYS Financial about their recent expansion, consolidation and celebrating the success of family-run and Portlaoise-based GTL Life and Pensions. They were recently acquired by SYS Financial. We'll find out all about that acquisition and what it was that attracted SYS Financial to the business in the first instance. Also later on you'll hear about a major jobs and career expo that will take place in the Midlands early next month. And we'll remember a local businessman who passed away recently too. So that and a whole lot more coming up across the show this evening. Of course, it'll be very, very hard to run a business show and this time in January, and given the world we're now in, without having some thought on trade wars and potential EU countermeasures and that overall uncertainty that seems to now just exist with us every day. So what are the potential impacts on small businesses, and at what point as small business owners do we need to reflect, and will we potentially start seeing the real impact of what's going on? We'll begin by looking at what's actually happening now, because remember, most of the trade agreements that are in place worldwide take decades to get into place. Mercosur has been in negotiations for 25 years at this stage. And yes, there's been sign-off and agreement, but it's far from over the line just yet, as you will know from the recent protests, not just here in Ireland, but across Europe too. So that is a long way to run yet. But it gives a sense of how long it might take to strike a trade agreement between two nations, between two jurisdictions, or whatever that might be. But given all the turmoil and the talks of tariffs, I mean, if you're in France now and you're hearing things about 200% on champagne and wine, what do you think of that? Like, how do you actually deal with that, and how does that, is that likely to happen? If the US threatens tariffs like that on other European nations for failure to back Donald Trump and his stated ambition to take control of Greenland, what happens? Can the EU kick back with countermeasures? What are the consequences of that? Well, who knows, I suppose, is the starting point there. But let's look at that whole area of trade and negotiations, trade wars, whatever you want to call it, and get some background on this and some good information about what's actually happening out there. To do so, I'm delighted to be joined by David Savage of Deloitte. David is a board member also of Mullingar Chamber of Commerce, and David is certainly an expert in this field, and it's an area he's been specialising in for a number of years now. Good evening, David, and welcome back to Taking Care of Business.
Hi, Ronan. Good evening.
David, I'm going to give you the easy question to start with, or the easy job. Can you set the scene for us? Just looking at where we are now, January 2026, and all this talk of, global trade agreements, coercion tools, all that anti-coercion tools and everything that's going on lately. And if you can, give us an update of where we are at this point at just after 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening.
Well, I'll do my best, Ronan. I'll do my best. So I suppose I think President Trump has just given a press conference marking his 1 year in office in the US. And if we rewind to last year, he came in on an agenda, or on a platform of America First. And we saw then on the 2nd of April last year, we had Liberation Day. On that, he said he was going to levy 20% on goods coming from the EU and various other rates of duty on goods coming from other jurisdictions around the world. And then, of course, we had an adverse market reaction to that, where the US bond yields went up or went down, depending on your point of view. And he had to backtrack somewhat that. We went back down to a 10% rate. And during that time, he gave the world then 100 days to come and negotiate trade deals with the US. And during that time, the EU managed to negotiate a 15%. So that was the position where the agreement fell. So a 15% rate of duty on goods coming from the EU into the US. So we thought that's great. Now we have certainty going forward about that. And that was fine up until last week when some stated ambition, as you said yourself, or some territorial designs on Greenland. And obviously that's really upset the Danish government, who hold jurisdiction over Denmark, and indeed the EU. The US, or some European countries then decided that they would send some military personnel to Greenland in order to kind of address some of the security concerns as outlined by the US, and that was not interpreted very well by the US administration. And arising from that, there's now going to be 10% duties levied on 6 EU countries and 2 non-EU European countries, like the United Kingdom and Norway. That's starting on February 1st. And if the Greenland issue is not resolved by 1st June, that rate of duty will rise to 25%. Now, the issue here is that it's unlikely that the EU will let this happen without some sort of reaction. And if that happens, I'm afraid we might be into a trade war scenario.
And we've heard that term trade wars mentioned quite a lot over the past year, particularly since Liberation Day. Many people probably don't know what it really entails, what it might mean, but we're probably edging closer to that, as you've just said. We hear of things like the big bazooka being mentioned and things like the anti-coercion instrument and ACI. What is that? And in what kind of circumstances would that be designed to be actually implemented?
Well, put very simply, the ACI, or as you say yourself, the big trade bazooka, is a set of punitive measures designed to dissuade third countries. So the third country is a non-EU country from engaging in coercive behaviour towards EU countries. So that means basically it's a way of preventing countries from coming in and pushing EU countries around and making it, basically bullying EU countries.
The impact, if that was used, would have a big impact on particularly kind of financial services trading from the States, and could actually trigger a real negative effect in the US economy if it were triggered.
Yeah, it's never been used before, so it's very hard to answer that particular question. But I suppose it's very important to say that the EU wants this to be a deterrent and never really wants to deploy it. It's not unlike a nuclear weapon in the military sense, whereby the nuclear weapon is the ultimate weapon to use. You never really want to use it, but it's there to act as a deterrent for people, to prevent, say, other countries misbehaving or acting in a coercive manner.
There'll be certainly a lot of eyes and ears on President Trump in Davos tomorrow as he's due to speak and address the room there. But I guess in theory then, is it something that we think at this point it's unlikely to see being deployed, or what could change the next couple of days maybe that might see Europe having a serious conversation and maybe a vote on deploying such a measure?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, Ronan. I think I'd like to think the cool heads will prevail. Ultimately, in a trade war scenario, there's no winners. Everybody loses, ultimately. However, that particular instrument is there for a reason. And if it's never going to be used, then it's kind of useless. So it is there as a stick to be used if and when needed.
And then we see the kind of goading that goes on there, particularly Trump of Macron, saying, well, he's going to be out of power anyway, so he's insignificant. But if it starts getting personal too, it could be damaging. But let's look at it from the point of view of a trade agreement and the uncertainty that's out there. What are the particular pressure points, say, for Europe and for Ireland Inc. as we look at it now?
Again, that's a very good question. I think Ireland, as a small and open economy, is very vulnerable to issues that might cause that trade sort of friction. So these issues, when they become apparent, is really depends on a whole lot of different factors. On the import side, you mightn't see it too clearly in, say, in the shops or in supply chains, because the companies who are importing goods might want to maintain their market share and absorb the extra duties that kind of make up a price. But there, we saw it kind of manifest itself very quickly last year, particularly with the Section 232 tariffs. Now that's particular tariff on iron and aluminium that was introduced by the Trump administration, and they came in more or less overnight, and they had a big impact on Irish companies exporting certain goods into the US. So there definitely is risk, but how quickly it manifests, it really is dependent on the sector and dependent on the product.
And also dependent on one individual who seems to change his mind willy-nilly, and it's very hard to predict that. Certainly, I know even today Ursula von der Leyen was saying that you can't just rip up a deal that was only recently struck, and I think there might be a different view on that from the US. But we look at the US, it is one trade area, and like when Liberation Day happened, a lot of Midlands companies found new markets in Canada that they hadn't explored before, and we saw it happening with Brexit too. People started looking elsewhere. There's lots of talks of different trade deals. There's been Irish delegations travelling the world for the last couple of years. Mercosur, of course, is very much in the media at the minute. Is that the way forward, I wonder then, or will this just cause the European Union just to look at those other agreements and begin to look away from the US?
Yeah, again, that's a great question. I suppose there's two things I'd like to see here. I say, when the US has locked, or maybe not locked a lot of countries, but they've applied tariffs on a lot of countries, and then in some countries they've applied countermeasures, like as you said yourself, Canada. So where Canada applies countermeasures, that potentially creates opportunity for Irish companies. But then moving on to the trade agreements, I think they're quite important. Now I know there's sensitivity around the agriculture, the agriculture aspect of Mercosur, but from a manufacturing point of view, it does create opportunity for Irish manufacturers, and it does open up new markets, and it does help diversify the European economy, potentially a little bit away from the US. I still think the US economy will still be a very important marketplace for Irish goods. I don't think anybody's running away from it, but I do think that we do need to diversify away and reduce the risk. And that's what these free trade agreements do. And I see today that Ursula von der Leyen in the European Commission, she said that they're working towards a free trade agreement with India. And that would create a free trade zone of 2 billion consumers, which is huge. And that would create lots of opportunity for Irish exporters. And I think overall it's good news, notwithstanding the sensitivities around agriculture.
Absolutely, and that size of a population is bigger than the Mercosur area combined. It goes to show you how the world is evolving and where the power is shifting to. But I suppose finally, David, things for SME owners that we should be watching out for in 2026, rather that you trade experts are aware of, there are those kind of maybe key measures or red flags that we should just keep a close eye on over the next couple of months.
Well, I suppose I'm not sure I could have predicted very much of what has happened in 2025. So I'm not sure my crystal ball is working very well, to be honest with you, Ronan. But I think what's important to Irish businesses is just try to control what they can control. I think certain topics will continue to be, or certain elements will be very important for Irish exporters to think about going forward. And that's the quality of your customs data. That's really, really important. I think they, especially if you're exporting into the US customs authorities have really clamped down very severely on poor quality data, especially now that there's a lot of tariffs at stake going into the US. So I think investing a little bit of time in improving the quality of your data for goods going into the US, that's going to be important. I think as well, are Irish, especially companies in the SME sector, are they leveraging all the support that's available from the state? I know that Enterprise Ireland have a lot of support on offer, so it's worth looking into that. And then, is there anywhere, as I said before, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow some good. Where there's trade turbulence, there will be some opportunity. And just keep your eyes and ears open for that. I think then domestically within the EU, there are some issues that probably do deserve to be mentioned. From the 1st of January this year, we have CBAM, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. That's in place now. So that's relevant for importers of certain commodities like iron, steel, aluminium, cement, fertiliser. That's all subject to, unfortunately, an additional charge this year. And it's an environmental charge that's just come in from the 1st of January this year. Secondly, there is another environmental measure called the European Union Deforestation Regulation. That's actually been delayed. It should have been implemented from the 1st of January this year, but it's been delayed by 12 months. So if you have not heard of this and you think that you might be implicated, look it up on the European Commission website, see what products are in scope, and then begin to prepare. That would be my advice.
A couple of very important nuggets there too, and more so for people looking to. And as always, some great acronyms. I think business owners love new acronyms to have to wrap their tongue and brains around. But David, it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for that. And it's probably a conversation we'll be picking up again in a couple of weeks' time, given the tumultuous world that's out there at the minute. But David Savage, thank you so much for that this evening. David, of course, there is with Deloitte, but is also a board member of Mullingar Chamber. Now, time for a quick break. After that, one thing about the Mercosur deal was all about sustainability and making sure that products potentially coming from South America into the EU would meet the same environmental and sustainability standards. Well, how could a bovine breathalyser potentially play a huge role in farm emissions in years to come? Find out in just a couple of moments.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Laois, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
Still to come on this week's show, I'll be talking to Tony Delaney, the CEO of SYS Financial. They've just acquired Portlaoise-based GTL Life and Pensions, so we'll look at that and see what was it attracted them to the family-run business, and look at the overall strength and outlook for the year ahead for the financial services sector. And later on too, we'll hear about a major careers event that's taken place in the Midlands very, very shortly. And also remember John Connaughton of the Bloomfield House Hotel, who was laid to rest recently. But before that, I mentioned before the break about a bovine breathalyser, and so much talk over the past decade has been about sustainability and reducing emissions. Lots of focus went on the farms. So one area that people were kind of aware of was things like methane emissions and exactly what our livestock is emitting on a daily basis. And as people would say, David Savage mentioned it before the break about customs data, or data, whatever you want to call it, is everything these days. So imagine if you could track the data behind emissions from your herd. Well, a local company is doing just exactly that. You've met him here before in the show, Jack Pilkington of Agri Data Analytics. Jack, welcome back.
Ronan, good evening. Thanks very much.
Jack, bring us right up to speed with your bovine breathalyser. Just remind people what it does and tell us the latest that's happening with you.
Yeah, so I suppose Agri Data Analytics is focused on developing a methane measuring device for livestock. We've been working on this for the past 2 to 3 years now, and we're at a critical stage where the device is currently being tested on farms. At the same time, we're gathering real-world data to build and refine that algorithm running in the background. The aim just isn't to measure methane, but to turn that information into something accurate, trusted and useful for farmers, advisors and policymakers. Methane is often discussed, I suppose, at a high level, but what's been missing is reliable farm-level measurement, and that's the gap we're trying to address here.
So clearly an area that there was a lot of focus coming on in terms of emissions from farms. When did you first start? When did the idea first come? And I suppose, how did you get it this far so quickly?
Yeah, so I suppose back about 2.5 years ago now, we went through various accelerator programs, New Frontiers. We did an accelerator program, the AgTech accelerator program as well. And I suppose we went through the typical Enterprise Ireland funding scheme then as well, won the PSSF fund, and that was a great accelerator, I suppose, to actually drive forward and get the device up and working and running on farm.
And part of that, you're looking at the kind of research, looking at what's actually happening on farms. And you've been on different kind of trade trips over the last couple of years, both nationally here within Ireland and also overseas. And you're just back from one in Belgium and Brussels recently as part of the AgTech. What's AgTech and what was it led you to Belgium and Brussels in particular?
Yeah, so AgTech Ireland is a member-led, not-for-profit industry representative organisation, and it's focused mainly on agricultural technology in Ireland. So I suppose the aim is to promote, support and enhance Ireland's AgTech community, bringing together tech innovators, farmers, researchers, policymakers and investors, I suppose. We represent Irish AgTech companies. I suppose that's in discussions with government departments, EU institutions, research bodies, industry stakeholders and also the media. We act as that single point of contact for policy engagement, for trade missions, like the Brussels trip we embarked on last week, and research collaborations as well, both here in this country and international as well, and an advocate for the sector's role in sustainability and farm efficiency. showing how technology, I suppose, can help meet that climate, environmental and economic goals that we're all steering towards at the minute.
So there's been part of a group that put you in front of stakeholders or people that you think can actually make a real difference in terms of maybe setting policy or indeed promoting ag tech innovation and products like yourselves that ultimately can deliver in terms of reducing carbon emissions.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, like, I suppose, as we said, we went on the trip out to Brussels, and I suppose some of the main goals then from that side of things was to engage directly with some EU policymakers and MEPs, and to make sure that the ag tech voice is a part of the conversation early out there. And what made it particularly important was going as a delegation of 14 influential people across the whole agri food and agri tech sector. So yeah, it's inspirational to be alongside those people and voice their concerns.
What kind of insights did you gain from it?
So I suppose one of the strongest insights was how focused EU policymakers are on outcomes. I suppose that emission reduction, sustainability and the traceability piece. But also how much they now recognise that innovation is essential to achieving those goals. Out in the European Parliament then we met with Irish MEPs. The meetings were orchestrated by Barry Cowan, and we were joined by Nina Carberry, Kieran Malooly, Maria Walsh, Billy Kelleher, and I suppose there were some other MEPs dropped in and out as the meeting progressed as well. And yeah, our current theme was the policy needs to be underpinned by accurate real-world data if it's going to work, you know. There's a growing understanding in Brussels that measurement matters, for sure.
It is, the old saying goes, what gets measured gets done. And if you can, like in any element of, be if it's your own personal finances or a business you're running, if you can track the data, you can make better and informed decisions on it. From your own perspective, I suppose, an interesting time to be part of a agricultural delegation over in Brussels, or if you were in Strasbourg or somewhere, like a lot going on, talking about trade deals, particularly the Mercosur. Again, there's Irish MEPs on the ground there at the minute, I think, part of a protest as well. Did trade deals like that form part of your discussions or your conversations while you were there?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest parts of our discussions out there was the whole funding and regulation side of things. We had a very open conversation with MEP Maria Walsh about the Horizon Europe Fund. And I suppose that fund now is worth almost 175 billion, I think. So it's nearly double the previous cycle. So the opportunity there is significant. However, there was also frustration across the group about how complex and resource heavy, I suppose, the application process is, and particularly for SMEs and startups. Often smaller ag tech companies have exactly the solutions policymakers are looking for, but struggle to access funding. I think that's a huge problem in this country.
Is that Horizon Fund, is it ag tech specific, or is it general innovation or SME focused?
No, it's general innovation, yeah.
Okay.
So it's and I suppose it's open there for lots of ag tech innovations as well. But it's just the fact of actually filling out the application process. It is quite heavy, and the end result of it is hard to achieve.
Yeah, so you're far from the first business person to say that on the show, that sometimes the work that goes in to get the funding, you've nearly used up the resources already in terms of the actual man hours that go into that too. But as part of the visit, you also went to a veal farm. What was the purpose of that? Was it again just to look at what they're doing in terms of sustainability, or was there other things you wanted to research? Yeah,
that was a valuable part of the trip actually, Ronan. Seeing different European production systems, I suppose, firsthand, that adds real context to the policy discussions that we were having. The farm was extremely well run, efficient, professional, and it challenged some common assumptions as well. That kind of exposure helps ensure policy is based on reality rather than perception. And I suppose seeing different systems firsthand sharpens the policy conversation. But yeah, very interesting to see Veal Farm, my first time on one, and I have to say I was actually impressed with what I seen, even though there was a lot of talk in negative terms about veal farms.
You're not going to go into the veal business now too, are you? Because people probably know you have Clonernal Engineering too, but I suppose just to wrap it up, Jack, what's the future with Agri data analytics, and tell us what's happening with Clonernal Engineering at the minute too?
Yeah, so I suppose Clonernal Engineering, we're after having our busiest year so far. We nearly doubled in sales last year that we did from the previous year, so we're extremely busy there in terms of making all kinds of steel products, sheds mainly, kit sheds, delivered right across Ireland at the minute. And so exciting future there ahead, and we see huge growth in the coming year ahead. I suppose Agri data analytics then are focused on validation at the minute, refining the device, strengthening the algorithm, and ensuring the data stands up to scrutiny both scientifically and politically. So trust is everything in this space.
Devices out on farms at this point actually measuring?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have many devices out on a test farm at the minute, and we're basically building up that whole data set to help strengthen the algorithm running in the background of it. So we aim to have a lot more devices implemented by the middle of this year. So yeah, a lot of work to be done between now and then.
And find a way to streamline the application process and get the paperwork done quickly for the Horizon Fund and tap into that war chest that's there for Irish SMEs. But look, that's what we need to do. We need to get that word out there. David Savage mentioned about funding mechanisms, our businesses availing of the supports that are there to help them, in these uncertain trading times. The same goes for any SME. We need to know exactly what's happening, why groups like AgTech and people like yourselves are making these trips to Europe to find out what is available, in order to power the future of Irish and Midlands businesses. Jack, thanks a million for coming in this evening. Look forward to visiting your veal farm soon.
Thanks, Ron.
No better man. Why you have one business when you can have two? Right, time for a quick break, because after that it's kind of nearly fitting as well. We're going to speak to the CEO of SYS Financial, and they've just acquired a Portlaoise-based financial services company.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Laois, Offaly and find us on localenterprise.ie and Let's Talk Business.
Consolidation is reshaping financial services. Tony Delaney, the CEO, to discuss their recent acquisition of Portlaoise-based GTL Life and Pensions. It, of course, is a family-run business that was established in 1977 by the late John Lawler, and it's currently led by John's daughter Emma Lawler as managing director. So I'm very keen to welcome Tony to the show and find out more about this acquisition. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, Ronan. Delighted to be on, and thank you.
Not at all. No, it's a good news story, I suppose, and it's one as well that maybe does showcase that consolidation that's probably happening across the service. But I suppose to begin, just give us a quick overview of SYS Financial.
Yeah, look, we're 11 years, Ronan, in business in February. I set it up 11 years ago from the front of the house, and little did I think we'd go from that in 11 years to 75 staff and 4 offices nationwide, and growing, and we're very much an advisory firm where really it's down to protecting and creating wealth for clients and giving them financial peace of mind, and that's how sort of simple I like to keep it when I'm talking about it to our clients.
Absolutely. We think
right structures in place.
Yeah, we think of 11 years and we think COVID was only a year or two ago, but we're going back 6 years now. Did events like that, did they sharpen business owners and even private individuals, did it sharpen their focus on wealth management and really getting top-notch advisory services?
No, do you know what? I don't actually think it did, Ronan, because I suppose really, maybe people took time out during that and it was all on Zoom, and maybe didn't look at, you know what, I'm going to have a bit of time in my hands to refocus. But I think the economy has been driving a lot of it, and over the last number of years, and the amount of employment that's out there, and there's a lot of money there. So I think people are a bit more, I won't say astute, but they're, I think, definitely more tuned in than what I would have found in the last number of years. Like, I've done it 32 years now, and clients want to know more. They do know more themselves, but I always say a small bit of knowledge is dangerous, so let's deal with the experts.
Absolutely. And were acquisitions, was that always part of your strategy?
Probably at the outset, it was never, to be honest with it, Ronan, and not even having staff, because I had many staff in my previous life, but in the last 3 years, we've really we looked at it and we said we might do 1 or 2, but we've ramped it up completely in 2025, and probably have another 6 to announce between now and the end of February. We'll definitely have them done in the first quarter, but in January, I'd say we'll have 4 more outside of GTL. And we just did another one before Christmas in Waterford. Okay,
so it is you have significantly ramped it up as well. Is that all generally self-financed by the business, or have you brought in outside investment too in order to
we
power
have
that?
We have some outside investment to be. We have some, but I think the trajectory on now, we will be. I'd expect to bring in a substantial investment in. I'd expect it to happen in 2026, but only if it's right for the business and it's the right partner. But our plan is to probably go on an acquisition spree for the next 36 months, and by 2031 grow the assets to 5 billion.
Indeed. an ambitious strategy too. When it came to looking at GTL Life and Pensions in Portlaoise, what was it initially that struck you about them, and I suppose how did that process start about having that conversation about acquiring them?
Yeah, Ronan, well, I suppose, look, Emma would have been known to myself briefly, but probably our Chief Operations Officer, Aileen, is actually my own sister, so herself and Emma would have a very close relationship over the last couple of years, and probably met through financial services. And I suppose when you're up, you know what I mean, she took over from Laura Gersh, said the outside on John, but it can be a tough place for one-person operators, and, you know, with all the compliance and, you know, paperwork, etc., and then maybe looking to partners. So strategically, it was probably in the Midlands was ideal for us, but the age profile would have been way younger than we would look at. But we had a lot of great relationship with Emma, and I suppose we knew what we were getting. It had that family business, you know, values as well, and we had very much, you know, I'm very much people's and relationships, and Emma fitted exactly where we wanted. And I suppose, you know, it doesn't work. It's not one, when we're doing these deals, it's a partnership, and we have to work together hopefully for a number of years. So we have to be the right fit as well for Emma. But we sort of knew from the outset, and really, you know, we might have spoke about it 2 or 3 years ago, and really only got down to that Emma was serious about it in the middle of 2025, and we had no hesitation in sitting down and saying, look, Emma, we want to do a deal, and there's no need to look any further. We'll give you we'll look after you. And then, you know, she wanted to make sure her clients, that when she was going, she could say to her clients, look, I'm going to a company where they have real core values. They're very much driven by advice, and they have all the systems in place, like for regulatory requirements and proper board and chairman. So look, we really fitted the bill for Emma as well, and she was very conscious that had to work for her and her clients. So Emma, nothing really will change. Our clients will still deal with Emma, and you know, we'll be there to support that journey.
When it comes to looking at businesses to potentially acquire, do family-run businesses generally tend to come to the top of the list? Or are they ones you look at first, because particularly when you speak about trust and client delivery?
Yeah, and a lot of the businesses out there in the broker market, Ronan, are what we would call sort of the one-man, two-man operators. There is some with staff. So our strategy is preferably late 50s, early 60s, looking to take some money off the table, but also want to stay involved for 3 to 5 to 7 years and maybe 10. And we sort of can give him that, and to get the best of both worlds. But what I say to him is, like, what do we love doing all our lives is we love meeting clients and getting out and doing the business, and some of the other stuff we don't, you know, it doesn't float our boat, if that's the right words to use. And we say, look, we'll take away all the heavy lifting, the parts you don't like to do, and you can carry on. And then we have our investment values and propositions built that would be different than most, you know what I mean, the market. So we bring that extra intellectual capital, I suppose, to them as well. And that's we like to focus on. It de-risks us a little bit as well, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, it's a sector that's heavily regulated and there's a lot of governance needed. But when you come to look at companies too, they have to look at the technology they're using, their digital kind of expertise as well, or do you like to try and get into companies and maybe bring your own systems in then?
No, a lot of us in the market are using some of the same technologies, but I suppose that's ever evolving now, Ronan, with AI, so we're currently looking at that. But what we'd like to think is everyone we meet, we might be all doing the same thing in different ways, and then if someone is doing it better, well, you know what, we'll that part over there, do you know what, we'll wrap that into our system or even in our process. But we are very much, you know, there's a lot to talk in the industry about technology and Zoom and Teams calls and AI, but one thing you can't beat is relationships. And, you know, that's not going to, I don't think that's ever going to change. There'll be a certain level of business that will be done by Zoom and Teams and maybe some AI. But if you want proper advice and structures, you're going to have to sit down with someone. I think people want to look at you as well. They don't want to say, look in the white of your eyes, but they want to sit down with you, build that relationship and build that trust. And that's one of the things I would really push the team, is that to build proper relationships, you have to be face-to-face. It's not Teams. Yes, Teams is better than a phone call, but we really want to have a long-term relationship and a partnership with our clients as well. So will technology form part of it, but will I ever move away, and will the company move away from having that touch face to face. No, we won't.
Absolutely. Well, the money itself might be more digital these days, but the good old face-to-face and human element really can't be overlooked. I think not too many people listening would tend to disagree with you on that one. I suppose, Tony, as we enter the start of 2026, now speaking on the show already about trade agreements and global uncertainty, are you detecting, though, still a high level of confidence amongst your clients?
There is a lot of confidence out there, and I suppose the one thing I'll always say to people is we sort of always look backwards, and the last number of years have been really good for markets. And, we're always expecting a correction. And they do correct themselves every so often, even within the 12-month cycle, and bounce back that you wouldn't hear a lot of noise. But, last week we had an investment meeting with an external provider on the investment side, and looking at bespoke and someone with them. And they were very bullish about the Irish economy and maybe not heading recession. But then... and there was questions over America, but that was last Tuesday. And then if you picked up the papers or online since the weekend with Trump, now there's a lot of concerns, and you can see the markets are down the last 2 days. So you sometimes have to knock out the noise. But I always say to people is if there's money there, a lot of people talk about return, how much you're going to get a return on my investment. But the key part is here, you get a return on your capital first, and then what's your asset class and what risk you have to take. So, I always say to people, look, be cautious, don't follow the herd mentality, and, that we all know there's a big AI has been made, anyone who's in that has made thousands. Is that to last? So look, you have to really think that's where no robot or AI is going to tell you this, Ronan.
Absolutely.
And you have to sit down and go through this with your clients.
So are you basically telling me that you haven't pumped all your money into gold in the last couple of days then?
No, definitely not. And again, gold is at an all-time high, and like you look at everyone asking me about crypto and Nvidia.
Yeah.
But how long does that go? So a lot of the market has been driven by the Magnificent Seven, and I'm saying to people that there has to be a diversification away from that. Yes, you can have your money invested, but I'd call it a stabilizer portfolio that if that happens to take a bit of a dip, that there's something else over here doing something different, and that is the whole thing about diversification.
Absolutely, and as you said, not following the herd and not following the crowd and all that kind of stuff. But Tony, it's a great story, and it's a great success story, and fantastic to see you have taken such a strong presence in the Midlands region now with the acquisition of GTL Life and Pensions. For now, Tony, thank you so much for that, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Yes, Ronan, and thank you very much for having me on.
Not at all. An absolute pleasure. That's Tony Delaney there, the CEO of SYS Financial, now, of course, with an operation in Portlaoise too. Time for a very quick break. After that, we're going to find out about a Careers Expo taking place in a couple of weeks' time. And we'll remember a businessman from the Westmeath area that was sadly laid to rest last week.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Laois, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
The importance of a local jobs fair or career exposition can't be understated because so much change in the jobs market out there. When I started my working career probably 25 years ago, my next guest I think was still in nappies. Irrespective of that though, my point is things change a lot. Sometimes people change sectors, there's transition into different roles. But often making people aware of those very roles that are available is a key part of that in the first instance. Mullingar Chamber have a Midlands Career Expo planned for next month. President of Mullingar Chamber, James Burke, joins me now. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Ronan. I don't know how to react to that opening line of yours there, but I'm not quite that young. I was out in Appy 25 years ago.
You're probably not far. Not far. Anyway, the Midlands Career Expo, it's coming back on Saturday the 21st of February. Tell us all we need to know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's an event that has been quite successful for us in previous years. It's something that's very important to our members because, as a lot of your listeners will know, recruitment is very tough. It has been tough for a long number of years now, and it hasn't really eased up yet either. So, yeah, it's something that we're looking forward to bringing back again. As you said, our Career Expo is going to take place on Saturday the 21st of February, kicking off from 9:30 in the morning because, Saturdays can be a busy day. So we want to kick off early in the morning, and we run usually until about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the day just to try and catch as many people as possible. I suppose the day, it's one of my favourite days of the calendar for the Chamber over the year because there's such a buzz in the room. We'll have various different exhibitors set up across all sorts of different sectors, and people can come in, ask questions, come in with your CV. And I suppose the whole ethos of the event is we want to show that there's huge amount of high quality employment available within the Midlands, that you don't have to travel and commute off to the nearby cities of Dublin, Galway, Limerick, wherever, that, there is good employment available here within Mullingar and within the wider Midlands area as well.
And of course, on the day, it's not just people meeting other companies or looking at career opportunities. You've also guest speakers and different contributors throughout the day.
Yeah, I suppose the speakers is always a very important part of it, that, you can come along as well as seeing the businesses, that, there is a few bits and pieces of information to pick up. I suppose we've a couple of lovely speakers lined up for this year. First of all, Andrew Lynch, the Chief Innovation Officer at IMR, Irish Manufacturing Research, is going to be given, I suppose it's a topic that you've mentioned a couple of times in the programme already, Ronan, that he's going to be talking about how to thrive in an AI-driven workplace. So it's a massive area at the moment, and we know it is going to affect anyone who's seeking employment in pretty much every industry that's out there in years to come. AI is coming, whether we like it, don't like it. It's going to be surrounding us in our everyday life, and particularly in employment. Okay. And then our second... Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
No, sorry, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have more speakers too. You've a special guest you want to get to as well, you told me.
Absolutely,
it's not me.
It's not you. No. We have you involved in enough of our events, Ronan. So, we're huge announcements that's only been unveiled this week from the team that's running this for us, our Career Expo committee. We have the Rose of Tralee, Caitlin Cummins, who would also be known, I suppose, and come into spotlight when she was unveiled as the Rose of Tralee, as a young electrical apprentice, which I suppose is something that was really caught the headlines and gripped people, to say that, geez, and it's lovely to see a young woman who has taken on an apprenticeship. And I think it's something that will be very fitting along with our event. We usually do get a lot of young people coming to our event as well, students who are in school and all the rest of it. So I think Caitlin will be a really strong fit there for us.
Yeah, a great role model and a great example of that. And you mentioned there, there's so much diversity in terms of the careers and jobs on offer, even just around the Mullingar area, right from the medtech and the pharmaceutical down to manufacturing, retail, hospitality. And hospitality is often an area maybe we sometimes overlook, because the sheer numbers of people employed by local hotels in particular is quite staggering. Many of them are running 200 or 300 people there between full-time and part-time staff. And on that, Mullingar lost a kind of a very famous person in the business community last week, John Connaughton, of course, who was synonymous with the Bloomfield House Hotel that he acquired in the 1970s alongside some local partners. John was laid to rest recently. How should he be remembered in your local business community?
Yeah, there was some wonderful stories been shared about Johnny during the week, all around Mullingar. He was a serial entrepreneur. He was involved in a lot of different areas, the likes of agriculture through, I suppose, cattle, and also the horse breeding business, something that was remarked that he was very proud of as well. In particular was the horse side of it. And as you mentioned, the hugely successful Bloomfield House Hotel, and I suppose a lot of people who travel to the Mullingar area will know it there. It's a beautiful location, and it's a hugely successful business. So a very sad time for all the family, friends and the staff out there in Bloomfield as well. It's a lovely setting out there in Bloomfield. It's something we use for different events. I know you were out there with us for one of our events as well, Ronan. It's a really lovely location out there. And I suppose it's a really successful business. It's a testament to Johnny and all he's done in his life.
And of course, it's another, I think it's a timely reminder to all of us that figures like John and people like him, they play such a huge role regionally and to our local towns and communities. It's almost hard to quantify it, really.
Absolutely, and I suppose Mullingar, like all the Midlands towns, are made up of these business characters that, I suppose, as you grow up, you go to these different businesses and you see these people and how they run their business, and they're all to be admired. But a very sad time for the Connaughton family, and on behalf of Mullingar Chamber, I'd like to express our sincere condolences.
And I'll echo those too from all of us here at Midlands 103. James, it's been a pleasure. Keep up the great work, and looking forward to talking to you again on the show soon.
Ronan, thanks very much.
Not at all. Pleasure. That's James Burke there, the president of Mullingar Chamber. And just there at the end, just remembering the late John Connaughton, of course. Think of the Bloomfield House, synonymous with Mullingar. And pretty much any time you're heading over there, you nearly pass it or you're in it in some capacity meeting somebody. And what I love about it is the function room used to be a church at one stage, that apparently behind some of the partitions on the walls, the original stained glass windows are still there now. I'd love to see them someday, but goes to show you the vision that him and his partners had back in the 1970s. May he rest in peace as well, and our condolences to his wife Teresa, his children Julie, Laura, Dara and Elizabeth, and his grandchildren. That's bringing me to a close for the show for this evening, and as always it's been hectic, it's been jam-packed, it's been fast-paced, and we've touched on everything from global trade, looking at the future for Irish ag tech, looking at funding mechanisms that are there, things like the Horizon Fund that's available through the EU that maybe is not being tapped into properly by Irish businesses. We also spoke about the Bloomfield House there, the Mullingar Careers Fairs as well, and the acquisition in Portlaoise of a financial services business, which again shows great consolidation in that sector and a vote of confidence for the Midlands. Time for me to go. Joe's here next with Country Roads. I'll talk to you all next week.